Episode 58. Where Are They Now? With Dan Nguyen, the Great Curator. Part 2. Bonus. Hey, Card Fam. So, this is the episode that no one asked for. And I do say that in jest because I am only now finally getting around to publishing the second half of my recording with Dan, the Great Curator. And we recorded around Halloween time, and the first half published or dropped a little bit over a month ago. I think around November 9th. So, what's interesting is since that time, and it's been a little bit over a month, no one, not a single person, asked me where the second half of that conversation was. And that's kind of surprising to me. It just might mean my engagement is just getting really low. So I talked about all the reasons why that this was the case. It wasn't by design, just a lot of things have happened in the hobby. I won't rehash all those things, but I did talk about that in an earlier episode. But I do want to say, for those of you who are waiting for this episode to drop and we're doing so patiently, thank you so much for doing so. And of course, thank you so much, really, truly, for listening to this podcast. I'm so excited for 2024 and what that will bring for this podcast, and I don't know, my content and just my hobby journey, your hobby journey, just seeing what is in store for 2024 is going to be really interesting. So before I get to Dan's episode, I will put in here a read for my card post, a new sponsor for this podcast. This may the timing is interesting because we start this second half, because I listened to it before I started recording this intro. We started talking about how people monetize content in the hobby, and at the time of this recording, again around Halloween time, I had not taken a single sponsor and a single sponsor dollar, and that has now changed. And I do want to thank the head of my card post, Mark Hill, for the sponsorship. Also, Arena Club. I don't have a read for them now, but we did come to an agreement, and so it's something. These two sponsorships and sponsorships in general within the hobby, it's definitely a topic that I have been thinking about in the back of my mind about, to publish or make content about, in a podcast form or, Instagram reel, because I do think that there are some misconceptions about sponsorships in the hobby. And I would like to share, as much as I can without, you know, divulging specific maybe dollar amounts, but maybe ranges, not just the money part, but just, the terms and just kind of how things look, just to give you a glimpse. And I am still trying to figure all that out because I definitely don't want to like step on people's toes, but also no one's like trying to censor me. That would be a big no-no. I think I would not want to work with anyone who would want to like control my content. So thankfully, no one's doing that. So be on the lookout for that content in the future. I just have to kind of like, you know, wrap my head around all of that. But I do think it's an interesting topic. So, okay, this second half, I did listen to it, like I said earlier. I wanted to create the show notes and description for this podcast episode. And what's really wild is one of the questions, because we get into Q&A from the Instagram listeners, one of the questions came from Rob G, the sports card therapist. And I mean, geez, it just goes to show you how much happens on a hobby in the span of a month. Just time really does fly in this hobby, but that's also what they say when you're having fun, right? So, it's really interesting that we field a question from him, and I've given my thoughts on that already, and it's when I'm recording this intro, it's December 15th, and just wow, just this past month has been, I don't know, it feels like every month or every week, every day, there's just something. But it's definitely makes for a lively discussion. So let's see what else. I would say even if you don't like The Great Curator, or actually maybe especially if you don't like The Curator, I would encourage you to listen to this episode. I know sometimes in the past I'm like, turn it off, don't listen to this. But I feel like especially in the last few minutes of this second half uh, of the conversation. So this, what is it, episode 58? Much as people want to malign Dan, he is a real person, and I really do think that a lot of you who may be some of the detractors would miss folks like Dan if they left the hobby, because much as they can be polarizing, which I admit, because he's not for everyone, um, you can't say that he's not entertaining, and he does provide value. My opinion, as opposed to people who just want to criticize, you know, uh, the man in the arena, for instance. So I would definitely encourage folks to create their own content, to put yourself in the shoes of a content creator. I know it can be daunting, but just, and I'm not saying everyone has to start showing their face on camera, but, I feel like the more you do things like that, you can start to have more empathy for people who do that. And, that is ultimately the essence or the theme of this podcast is, try different things and see what you like, see what you don't. But at least you can say that you tried. And also, maybe in doing so, you can uh, get some more empathy for people who do those things. And so I think that's all I wanted to say to start this long awaited, really only me and Dan. And to Dan's credit, he wasn't like, when are you publishing it? When are you publishing it? He was just patient and he was nice. And he's like, I can't believe, are you still doing that podcast? And I'm like, yeah, it's still going on, I guess. So again, after this intro, there will be a quick little read from my card post. If you listen to a couple of episodes ago, you will have heard it. And so thank you for listening. If you have any questions about my card post, I really like them. And so if you would like to reach out to me, be glad to answer any questions or direct you to Mark Hill, the owner of My Card Post. And yeah, I'm just really ready to get rolling on this episode. So without further ado, I bring you the second half of my conversation with the great curator Dan Nguyen. And oh yeah, if you need a refresher, go back and listen to the first half. Why not? I mean, it's free. It's there. It's episode 49. So again, that was, what is it? My notes say November 9th. That's when it was published. So enjoy. Have a wonderful holiday season. Hey, card fam. You ever feel that sting like I have when you sell a card online only to see 12 to 14% of your hard earned money just vanish in seller fees? It's almost like a penalty for using online platforms. But here's the game changer: My Card Post. Instead of those frustrating fees on every sale, I just pay a small monthly subscription. So that way, I get to keep a lot more in my pocket. My Card Post is a place where collectors like us come together. It's about building new relationships in a trusted community where we can all safely buy, trade, and sell. BTS. And that's what I'm about: community building and safe transactions. If you want to join, it's free to set up an account if you only want to buy. But if you want to sell and trade as well, you can get started for as little as $9 a month. And I got to hook you up for listening. Use promo code DENNY when you join, and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months. And I'm already there. I have my shop. I'm buying, trading, and selling, and most importantly, connecting. So go to mycardpost.com and use my promo code DENNY, DENNY. Come check it out. I think you'll really like it. So see you there, where my card post every night is trade night. Um No, I get what you're saying. I would like to inelegantly transition to monetizing the hobby, because that's something that I've been grappling with, and I've talked to you about it and other people, and trying to figure out when you say these folks who are making criticism content or participating
They're hate
in the hobby.
keepers. They're hate
Yeah,
keepers.
they're hate keepers. I made that comment a while back too. Yeah, gatekeeping and hate keeping. Uh, it's interesting. People have called you a gatekeeper, but I don't think that's the case. But we can get to that too. But when it comes to that type of content, like, I have not monetized my content at all. There's no way to monetize Instagram content. I know there's ways to make ads on YouTube, and like it's like Superman. It's like in the Office space where they're like pennies on pennies. It all adds up or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I know you've taken on promotions and sponsors in the past. Shout out to Mr. Minty, I guess. This is where you can plug them if you want. But how does that all work? I mean,
My appearance on the
you had it
Hobby
right there.
with Hobby S. Thompson is Mr. Minty's product. Use code Curator, 25% off, MrMinty.com. Okay, sorry about that.
There you go. Obligations done. Done.
Contractually obligated to do that.
Yeah. But like, how are people, when you say, like, your time, we all have time that's worth, that's it's got to be worth our time. And I know my wife is like, when are you going to actually, like, not spend money in the hobby? And you keep saying you're going to self-fund the hobby. When is that going to actually happen? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm still trying to figure that out. But I mean, can you, in this podcast format, kind of talk about how people start doing things like that?
Yeah, so I think the common misconception that people have in the hobby is that if you want to monetize in the content space, you got to make, you got to make content. You got to have a YouTube channel, you got to have a vlog, you got to go around and do deals and basically get a bunch of followers. And if you get a lot of views on the type of content that you make, you get paid from YouTube or Instagram or whatever, right? That is I guess the what I call the misconception of most people in the hobby, because in reality, once you get to that point, even if you're at a level like Jeff Wilson, where you have like over 100,000 followers and you get tens of thousands of views per content,
Hmm.
the way that you're paid out on that stuff is very minimal. I mean, it's not worth the time. It's not worth the investment for the level of production that you have to pay for to get that type of content, right? You make a couple $100 a month,
Hmm.
it's not even enough for a car payment, basically, for most people. So that is kind of like, you learn that pretty quick. You learn that pretty quick in the hobby. And what I've kind of, the path that I've taken, there's several ways. There's several ways you can monetize within the hobby, right? Sponsorships is one, things like that. But the way that I kind of look at it is I look at it from a very high level and long term in regards to trying to build a brand within the hobby where people associate you with something. You have a great reputation and people associate you with something in the hobby, whether it's you're super knowledgeable, whether it's you're great at flipping cards or whatever it is, or you're super entertaining. They acknowledge you because you've built up a brand. And if you can reach that point where you build up a brand and people just know you by your name or your face, then you can start to monetize that by doing partnership deals with companies, products, um, people out there, and that is the real opportunity. And when you get there, then you get all the doors open up to you. You get, you can get um, contracts where you get paid salaries. You can get investment opportunities. You can get other type of non uh, non cash deals that you can turn around and later monetize in a different way. So there's a lot of value that comes out of that. And that's where I think people are really, if you're in the content space, you really have to start thinking about that versus just trying to build up as many views as you can and get a following. Because what people tend to do, excuse me, what people tend to do is, I feel like I call this the Mr. Beast the Mr. Beast effect, where
Hmm.
they try to be they try to be big every time, right?
Mhm.
Oh, I just did a $10,000 deal. Oh, I just did a $50,000 deal. Oh, I flipped this card in a day. They try to like one up themselves and do really crazy over the top type of content. Um, and that stuff is just not relatable, to people. It might be fun to watch, right?
Mhm.
But it's not relatable and it's not sustainable within the
Yeah.
content space. So I think that, for me personally, I try to build a brand around the things that I do within the hobby. And I try to build relationships with people and and different companies and things like that. And that's worked out well. I'm not like Jeff Wilson or anything like that, but I'm definitely, I've got sponsorships for my little YouTube channel, so that's kind of cool. And I made a little bit of money, and I'm building these opportunities, and I just hope it continues and see where it goes.
Awesome. Well, I'm still grappling with it. Like currently, again, just kind of I guess mini shout out to Arena Club. I'm doing a giveaway with them, and I did not. It's not a sponsorship. It's just a hey, we'd like to maybe help you celebrate getting 6,000 followers and all this and that, and I guess having a podcast as a prize wasn't good enough because there was like 7 entrants. But this card, it's like a estimated somewhere around $500, and it's a Michael Jordan, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I'll follow and tag and put stories and all that. So I totally get would I consider someone like that in the future, like some sort of partnership thing? Sure. I mean, but I think maybe right now it's just more of a building relationships type of situation. And so there have been like marketplace competitors, case competitors, like paraphernalia accessories competitors who have kind of like talked to me, right? And then maybe some soft offers or some negotiations floating around, but I just haven't been able to pin anything down just because I feel like whatever move I make, it's like in some ways, whatever move I make it will be the right move. And there's no like I shouldn't second guess myself. But then me being who I am, I just feel very like I don't know, maybe the word is skittish or nervous to make a move because once I make a move, then people will be like, he's been doing this whole thing for money. I knew it. This guy thought he was a true collector. And now he's just like, he's a grifter, just like everyone else. And it's like, man, like, I just feel, I guess I feel kind of scrutinized. And I don't know if it's me just being too hard on myself, but I also know that whenever I wear something, I get comments, mostly good, but sometimes not good. But I'm still in the point where I put something out there and people will just comment on just things that I think they would not comment on. And that's kind of a strange place to be in, I think, for me.
You know, Something that I've learned, in the last few years of my life as I've achieved a level of success personally, professionally, inside and outside of the hobby is that you're always going to get people that will criticize you for achievements because it's more of a reflection on themselves, right?
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
jealous. Oh God, why does he get that? I should get that. I deserve it, right? I'm better than him. People will hate on you for that, or people will secretly be rooting against you. They might say,
Hmm.
"Oh, congratulations," but in their mind, they might say, he's gonna fail." Or if you do fail at something, they might say, I knew it, right? That's just that's just how a lot of people are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to kind of tune that out the best that you can, and do what's best for you, your family, the people that are closest to you, the people that are generally happy,
Hmm.
and are rooting for you, because you're always
Yeah.
going to have those people that are going to try to bring you down, because it just comes from they don't want to see other people succeed. They're just jealous, essentially what it is, right? And you don't need them. You don't need their approval. You don't need anybody's approval, but you especially
Hmm.
don't need theirs. And the way
Right.
that I kind of look at it, this is what I kind of realized, because I had a lot of people attacking me too for various reasons over the last year or so. I just think to myself, like, why would I care about somebody's opinion who I've never met in real life, who I don't know, I don't know what they look like, I don't know their name? Why would
Hmm.
I care if they leave a comment criticizing me? Why would I let that one comment stay in my head and ruin my day versus all the other positive comments that
True.
that come out? And that's just that kind of perspective that you need going forward. And in the content space, it's rough, dude. I'm telling you, we've had private conversations before where we're just out there trying to figure this out, right? This is
Hmm.
still a relatively new thing in the hobby where people are making content and making money off of the content within the hobby space. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that when they see somebody get a big sponsorship deal or attached to a company and they see them getting resources from that, they don't understand that it takes to the level of commitment and the level of commitment that it took to get there is significant. Like, just you looking right now to pay for this StreamYard
Yeah,
uh,
man.
subscription. That's money every month. That
It
mic
is.
that you're using, the headphones, the
It is.
time that you're taking
Hmm.
away from your family. All this is a commitment that people just don't credit when they see people reach a certain level of achievement or success in the hobby. And I think that, that's just the way it is. So you have to kind of tune that stuff out and just continue to go forward if you're for as long as you're willing to. When it starts to feel like you're not getting the reward that you want and it becomes more like a job to do this, then
Hmm.
I think that's when you can reconsider things.
I know that helped me a lot. I hope that helped listeners who, whether you are a content creator or who wants to make content. It's interesting. It's like none of what I do feels like work or a job. It's so much fun to me. Like when I think people don't believe when I say like all the content I make and even this podcast, it really I love it. It's so much fun. It's almost like me giving back to people who make content in the hobby and also out. I mean, there's some of the well, not to other people maybe, but for me, some of the funniest things that I make are inspired by things completely outside of the hobby that I kind of, bring into the hobby. Like, I kind of adjust it. And so, can I just talk about something just to pivot real quick? This is a great conversation, but
Can I just
one,
one thing I want to say
sure,
just to kind of keep us on track too?
sure,
I do have to leave in about 20 minutes. So
yes.
I think that we should get to at least two questions because you did make that post.
There's like
So
50.
yeah,
Okay.
so we'll try to rapid fire that, but definitely go say whatever you want to say. What's on your
Here's the
mind, and
thing.
we transition.
Speaking of content and how much you don't monetize, you literally. So when I wrote my notes, I saw that you had 2.6 million views, 2.6 million views on your video where it says
2.8,
busted.
2.8 now.
That's what I was about to say. Now it's at 2.8 million views. Busted by TSA when they were checking out your slabs going through one of the airports. Do you know you remember which airport it was?
Austin Airport.
Austin Airport. It's insane. 2.8 million views. You don't collect a single cent off that, I think. Or do you?
No, no,
Yeah, you
that's
don't.
yeah,
That's the wild thing.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I just wanted to make that note. And of course, shout out to Mr. Minty. So let's get to the questions because you don't only have 20 minutes. I've been trying my best to keep these under an hour, but with you, it's like we could go forever all the time. But thank you for being the first real two-time guest. I guess Rob's was a kind of like an asterisk. So it's
Two-time
funny
champ,
because,
two-time champ
yeah,
right here.
two-time champ. This question actually comes from Rob G, the sports car therapist. You were on his podcast. I forget exactly how long ago, but I listened to it and it was a really good episode.
Mhm.
His question, I asked him, "Hey, Rob, is there a question that you would ask that you didn't get to ask Dan because you guys ran out of time?" So his question, and shout out to Rob. And I feel like if anyone's listening to this, they already listen to Rob because he's like one of the best podcasts for the hobby out there right now. So, does being an international man of mystery ever get tiring?
Well, that's clearly a joke, but I would say no, because it's always rewarding. Like, I know he's joking around, but like if I can just kind of spin into like maybe more of a serious answer,
Sure.
it is. It's really cool to live in this hobby content space, make content, interact with people online is one thing, right? Through comments. But when you actually go out somewhere and somebody actually recognizes you
Hmm.
and says hello, shakes your hand, or even sometimes takes a picture with you
Yeah.
is very flattering. It's super cool. And it's happened to me multiple times. I was at the airport in LAX coming back from my Asia trip. Somebody recognized me. That was super cool. I was in Japan one time and somebody recognized me in the mall of all places. And then, whenever I go to car shows, people recognize me at Target and things like that. So that's just really cool. And it's just really flattering. And I don't think I'll ever get to the point where that will be annoying to me, because as long as they're respectful and cool, then I love engaging with people on that level.
Yeah, I agree. I've had that happen to me too at small shows and locally in my area, but I think it's pretty cool when that happens. I've actually also had weirdly people videotape me from afar and then send it to me, and I'm
Okay,
like,
that's never happened to me. That
okay,
would be concerning, to be honest. But
yeah. They were like, I saw you looking at the value bins. I'm like, well,
again,
yeah, that,
you got to be respectful, people. Please,
yeah,
just
yeah,
be cool, be
be
respectful.
cool. That person was he's a good guy. I won't say his name, out of respect, and but no, it's really funny that I can't believe I said that. So, when it comes to what you just said, I totally lost my train of thought. It had something to do. It probably wasn't even that funny. We'll just move on, I guess. Your okay. So this is from Instagram, and maybe I'll come back to that question or a comment I had. This is kind of like multiple people ask a similar thing. So I just want to say their names. I want to say their questions, but it's the general essence of the question. Okay. So Papa Jim Journey asks, how has your collection changed since the last time we recorded, which is 5 months ago? And what is your hobby focus for 2024? Similarly, Roars Cards asks, oh, there's the little one. Off camera, though.
Okay.
Interruptions.
Busted in,
Gotta
kids.
stretch.
Damn
Okay.
kid.
So, what's your hobby focus for 2024? What are you collecting? How has it changed? Roars asks, besides K-pop, what other niche cards are catching your eye? Desert Heat asks, what is your grail, current grail, and what are you seeking as a grail? And then Doyle 11 cards, who won my giveaway, who I will be interviewing after yours, I think. His question is, do you own the 1972 Gong Andre the Giant Monster card? So that's 4 people, 4 different questions, all generally asking, how's your collection doing since the last time we recorded, and how is it presently, and how is it going to look in the future?
Sure. Okay. So I'll try to see if I can remember all those questions. First, we'll
Yeah.
start with Papa Jim's. My collection, it might the overall theme of my strategy. My overall strategy has not changed since the last time we talked, but since I pivoted away from trying to be like a daytime flipper to trying to buy more rare cards, I started doing that about maybe 2 years ago. I still always try to buy the rarest one-off type of items that I can find, but I will say that I've expanded from cards to other rare items such as original comic book artwork, type 1 photos, things like that. So I'm always just looking for um, like uh, different type of verticals within the hobby where I can again find rare, relevant, interesting pieces that resonate with me that I don't mind holding on to, and then maybe later on I can flip. So that's kind of like what I'm doing. So right now it's still type 1 photos, original artwork. That's what I'm looking at right now. What was the second question?
So yeah, like what besides K-pop, what other niche cards are catching your eye?
So I mainly do a lot of modern stuff because I love modern cards, like modern wrestling cards and Marvel cards and Star Wars, things like that.
Yeah.
But I have been getting more and more into vintage cards. Vintage is always an interesting play for me. Some people would argue it's the safest play to make, and not just like vintage baseball cards, which I actually like. I just don't talk about a lot, but vintage Disney cards. I just picked up and graded a bunch of 1930s
I saw that.
Mickey Mouse story cards. So that's really cool. So anything from like the 1930s to 50s, vintage pop culture wise, I'm really interested in 1940s Superman, 1966 Batman, 1930 Disney cards, things like that. And then
You no, go ahead.
I was going to move to the next question, but
Oh, so you went with SGC on those, right? I think I saw that
yes.
in your reels. So I think that looks really nice with the black and white with the Mickey. But none of them went over like a 5, I think. I mean, because they are so very old, right? I mean, what was it about those cards that made such low grades? Yeah, because they
Well,
look
so
still nice.
these things are like super fragile, dude. They're like tissue paper, and literally, like when I got them raw, you could poke your finger through it. That's how fragile these things
Wow,
are. I
it's
went with
beautiful.
SGC because the person that I bought it from had already petitioned SGC to grade these, so they already had the
Mm,
information about it. When a company hasn't seen a card before, you have to petition them to grade it, and I didn't want to do that with PSA because I didn't have the information about these cards that SGC did.
Okay.
So just little known fact: if you buy, like, if you have the guy who sold me these cards, he had the original box that these came with. So if you
Wow.
have the original box, then they can do the research and then they can grade it. But if you don't have the box, you don't know what the hell this is because there's no, there's no information on these at all, right?
Yeah, no trademark, copyright, all that stuff on
Yeah,
the
none
bottom.
of that
Yeah,
stuff. So, so that's why I went with SGC,
that's
and they
beautiful.
just look really cool. But I just went with them because they already had the information in their system, and then they just kind of lend better with the black and white.
So for the people who are audio only, that was kind of like a picture, a black and white, almost like a grayed out, almost like a newspaper. Like that's how thin it
Yeah,
looked.
yeah.
And then it's like Mickey and Minnie kind of holding hands going through somewhere, and it was an SGC 5. Okay, cool. The third question was, what is your Grail currently, and what are you seeking as your next Grail?
The current grails. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to say that I have a grail because honestly, I mean, things that are like not to put me on like on a pedestal or anything like that and bragging, but like if I
Yeah.
really want something, I can spend the money to buy it. Like if I
Mhm.
really want to buy a $10,000 card or $20,000 card, if I really wanted to, I could buy it because collectively, all the money that I've spent on everything else
Mhm.
could equal any type of card out there, Mickey Mantle card or something like that. Whether I had the balls to spend all that
Mm.
money on one card or not. So I don't know if I have like a grail card that I can't necessarily get, but I do want. This kind of goes into the last question. One of the cards that I've been looking for a while is a 1973 Andre the Giant rookie card. I think
Mm.
that's what that guy was asking about.
Okay.
The
Okay.
PSA 10, which is very
Ooh.
rare. I have not
Okay.
found one of those. That would be on my list. I feel like I need to pick up a 52 Tops Mantle PSA 1 at some point. That would be on my list just so that I could have the bragging rights to do
Mhm.
that. Um, I that's really like the two cards that kind of stand out in my mind, vintage
Okay.
cards basically. But everything
Okay.
else I have all the cards that I kind of like want on various grades. I guess I can always upgrade to a higher grade and something like that. But I just kind of go through these phases where if something is I'm really interested in something, then I'll kind of like dive headfirst into it. I'll play in that area, like wrestling cards, for example. And then I'll move to like Disney cards for a couple months, and then I'll go to Marvel cards, and then
Yeah.
back and forth. So that's kind of like the main stuff so far.
That's great. You answered that barrage of questions all at once. Great. Speaking of wrestling, Inspired Sports Cards asks, are wrestling card prices impacted by whether or not a wrestler is a heel or a face?
No, I don't think so. And I'll give you an example. Currently, there's a big match brewing in Crown Jewel, which is the next pay per view event for WWE. It's going to be Roman Reigns, which is considered a heel, who is
Hmm.
super over, probably has some of the most valuable cards in wrestling today against LA Knight, who is a super over babyface,
Yeah.
and his cards are rising in price. So it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter whether you're a good guy or a bad guy. What matters with wrestling is, are you over with the crowd? Meaning, are you
Yeah.
popular? Do they like you? And do you have an active storyline that gets you on TV every week and gets people excited? If you got those things, then that's what impacts your price.
Yeah. All right. I love it. Thank you. Well, let's quickly pivot to the next one because I know we have you for a limited time here. Rock City Rip Boys, I mean, plural, I guess. I don't know. Asks thoughts on Arena Club and other selling platforms other than eBay.
I mean, I think a lot of people are trying to cash in on the hobby right now by starting different marketplaces, and it's a good business model because basically if you start a marketplace, you build the platform for people, and then they could sell their cards on there, and you take a commission. You have like really no risk except for the startup costs and the maintenance, and then just whatever advertising, right? And we see a lot of it. There's so many platforms out there, so many marketplaces, so many auction houses, out there. I could name like 20 right now, and probably 15 of them you never even heard of, but they're out there, and they all do well, and they all make money. And I think for us as consumers, it's a great resource because you can go to a very obscure site, and maybe you might find something that's overlooked, right? I found some great things on some of these auction sites I can't even share with you guys because I don't want you to go there, right? Because I want it for myself. But there's a lot of deals out there. So from a consumer perspective, I think that it's great. Is it a bit much? Probably. Like Arena Club, I've never bought anything from them, but they're another startup and they do a lot of things besides just having a marketplace. They have a
Yeah.
grading service and things like that. I think
Right.
it gets to be a little bit too much, to be honest. From a business model perspective, I don't know if that's the greatest area to be in the hobby, honestly, just because of the barrier of entry and the level of competition. Because when you
Yeah.
have so many people doing the same thing, it doesn't become a matter of who has the best service, who has the best platform, who has the best items, cards, or whatever. It becomes who has the best pricing, right? Who charges the least for buyer premium, who has the best or the quickest turnaround service for getting paid on consignments or things like
Hmm.
that, or best shipping, or who has the least fees. It becomes like a pricing war. And I think that you'll see with a lot of these companies, they just won't be able to compete long term, based on the level of competition out there.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll see if your answer changes in the future once they sponsor you or someone else. But that question was asked by Rock City Rip Boys,
If
and that
Derek
was,
Jeter calls me, then I'll be a Arena Club man for sure. Okay, I'll be their number one brand ambassador.
oh my goodness, type one photos of Derek Jeter as a young Yankee. That'd be amazing. All right, so here, gosh, I think we have time for maybe two. So let me do this. This is a
I'll
little
go.
tough one. I mean,
I'll
I'm
go.
not joking. This is a tough one. Okay, so Pancake Analytics asks, what ethical guidelines or principles do you follow when engaging in the trading card market activities? And how do you balance your responsibilities as a content creator with your role as a market participant?
Okay, so what he always answers, he always asks such like convoluted questions. Okay, but
Two
okay,
two questions
so
in there. Yep.
what type of ethical guidelines? There are no ethical guidelines in the hobby. We don't have a governing board. I've talked about this before. We should have a body that kind of sets out community guidelines for people to follow. What's cool, what's
Yeah.
not. Some
Yeah.
unwritten rules need to be established so that new people that come into the hobby understand what the level of expectation is. I've talked about this
Mhm.
before in many of my earlier videos where I talk about how we have to have a certain level of conduct within the hobby and hold each other accountable to that. But we don't have anything like that right now. So the terms in terms of what's ethical, I think for me, I am, if you're a good person, you act like a good person in the hobby. You don't
Mhm.
try to cheat people, you don't try to steal, you don't try to cause drama, conflict. But you do whatever you need to do within the hobby. If you flip cards, you flip cards. If you buy, sell, and trade, if you snipe bid on eBay, if you go to card shows and deal with people, that is all just part of the hobby. So you just do your best. And I think I don't really overthink it too much. If you're a good person and you treat people fairly, then you're good. If you're not, it's going to be very obvious. Okay. And there's really no gray area. There are good people in the hobby that have good reputations, and then there are bad people that have bad reputations, and it's pretty obvious. And the people that try to scrutinize the people in the middle, I think maybe they're just targeting them for selective outrage or things like that. Okay, so that's that one thing. And then the second part of that question, what was that? How do I balance
How do
that
you
with?
balance your responsibilities as a content
Okay.
creator with your role as a market participant?
Sure. With content creation, there's two ways to do it. It's either you're documenting your journey, like if you go to a card show and you're set up as a vendor, you just document it.
Yeah.
So that's just what it is, right? Like you don't want to necessarily uh, be very misleading with the way that you edit the videos or things like that. But
Mhm.
as a content creator, if you're sponsored, then you owe a certain level of whenever you take a sponsorship, you have a fiduciary duty to that sponsor to represent them in the way that they expect.
Mm.
So you might
Mhm.
be promoting a product that maybe other people don't like for whatever reason, and they might criticize you for promoting it even though you've never used it before or whatever. But
Yeah.
that's just what it is. That's the business aspect of the hobby, and I think people have to understand that. And again, it's very, to me, things are very clear. It's either something's like really, really, really shady or fake or bad or offensive, or it's not. And that's the way it is. We shouldn't overanalyze too many of these things, because we have to understand the intention behind it. As a content creator, if you get sponsored, then you're promoting whoever's sponsoring you. That's the motivating factor, right?
Okay.
If you're participating in the hobby in other ways, you're obviously trying to make money to trade cards or whatever. So that's what it is. We just have to understand that.
No, that's really good. Thank you. Not that he asked me these questions, but I would answer moral compass for the first one. Like you said, there's no ethical guidelines, but I think you just have to be guided by your own moral compass and what you think is right, and that's going to vary with everyone. And then secondly, I don't know if there are responsibilities as a content creator. I think maybe the responsibilities for an influencer, but this fiduciary duty you're talking about to represent sponsors, that's something that I'm gonna have to learn. I'm gonna have to like absorb and internalize that and think about that some more, because I haven't done that yet, and it's something that I appreciate you saying that, because that makes me have some questions that maybe I'll just ask you later down the road. But thank you for that. And when it comes to the ethical guideline principles, pancake analytics, great way to ask it. I mean, some people asked things maybe in more inflammatory ways, but Merle, he said something here. I wanted to uplift it. He said about you, "You're not anywhere at Jeff Wilson's level. As his coworker and friend, he's a great guy and misunderstood by so many haters. Living in LA for 26 years, I've met a lot of fraudsters, scammers, and pretenders. I can 100% say Dan isn't one of those. He and his family are very good and loyal to me and my family."
There you go, guys. You had it right there from Earl. He spent the most time with me in the hobby, so he's the best source for that. But I do take that as a slight, though, that I'm not as big as Jeff Wilson. How dare he? I'm gonna have to talk to him
Merle,
about it.
he is like he really is genuinely like one of the happiest people I've met in and out of the hobby. He's just at first I thought it was like some like drug or some sort of like altered, like he's putting on a show, but I got to meet with him and break bread with him and you, and like he generally is a good guy. I really I need more Merle and Dan in my life. So um that brings us to our final question. There's questions from custom card artists, and there's so many other things I want to get to, but we're literally at the 1 minute mark here, and I just wanted to ask you, Merle. It's his question, okay? And he asks a one-worded question, and that is why. And I am going to paraphrase that question to mean, in a very Michael Scott way of asking Toby, why are you the way you are?
Charismatic, you mean? Likable? I don't know. I was just born that way. I don't know. Can you give me a follow up? Give me something to answer. answer.
Uh, you know, I I think if people want to know the answer, they have to go back to the first time I had you on, where we kind of went through your journey and the little curator before we became the great curator, talking about your childhood and what made you happy when you were growing up and what you collected and all that. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like some of the people who have the best collections or the biggest or most expensive collections are the ones who grew up with the least when they were younger. I just feel like I hear that story over and over from people. It just they it's almost like their rosebud, their Citizen Kane. They just wanted something, they couldn't have it, and they finally got it. And by no means am I saying you have the richest collection and that you were the poorest when you're growing up, but you definitely have this very like, you know, again, I would encourage people to listen to the first time that we talked.
Well, I appreciate that. That's really nice. I mean, I'll try to answer this question as the best I can. Why am I the way that I am? I
It's a
just,
tricky
you
question.
know, I feel like this is just who I am in the hobby. I've chosen to kind of put myself out there by making content. So it really is just a creative way for me to kind of have an outlet to show off things, aspects of my personality that I can't usually do in everyday life. I work in a professional setting, so I can't always be the way that I want to be. So the hobby has allowed me to do that, and making content has allowed me to express myself in that way. And I feel like it's been very healthy for me, because it's been a great hobby, a way for me to occupy my time rather than doing other things, that doesn't give me that type of level of activity. So that's just kind of how it is. But basically, I mean, this is just the way I am. Like some people like
Mhm.
it, some people think it's funny, some people think it's offensive. I don't know. It's just how I am, and I don't think I'm going to change. I think I've kind of learned to be very comfortable with who I am in the hobby and the type of content that I make. And this seems to be working for me. So that's what I do.
I'm very happy for you, and I agree, and I really do enjoy your content. I do look up to you, which is in a weird way because you're younger than me and you have
With
less
that,
hair than
guys.
me.
With that,
You have
guys.
less hair that how are you younger than me? And look at our hairlines. It's incredible. Okay.
Well, I would say Koreans have really good hair. Genetically, Koreans have hair, but you do have better hair than me. But you also, uh, a nice way of saying it is a little bit heavier than me. So I think that's a fair trade-off.
I love Korean barbecue. What can I say? That's a great way to end. Dan, the great curator, you are a good person. You're a value add to the hobby. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to let you get to that other thing you have to do after this, which is just a lot of pumping what you like. I really appreciate you. Yep, there you go. Raise the roof. Thank you, Dan.
How would you
I'm
like
going to
me?
press end record, and you have a wonderful evening.
Appreciate it.